one of the members of the membership team with myself. He is member support. He is a coordinator in SoCal. He's also a member of the Haiti Americas team. It's a sort of piece. I'm like, how long is this list?
I know it's.
But yeah, incredible work coming out of Southern California and the work that BAP is doing specifically. So I wanted Carlos to come on here, talk about the recent campaign launch, the Community Defense Coalition, and how these things all tie in together with what we're seeing happening.
Yeah, like LA is currently under what appears to be occupation by federal forces and state forces, which are coordinating together. Erica mentioned Black Alliance for Peace Southern California's campaign launch, which took place last month on May 10th, and that's defeating the war against African Black people in Southern California, which, for those of you who don't know, is kind of done in thinking in tandem with the longstanding BAP national campaign of defeating the war against African people domestically and globally. And so we wanted to kind of localize that because I think we understood that certain kinds of alignments were being made, certain kinds of actions had been taken by the federal government, and that the city and state governments were doing very little to kind of intercede in those actions. And, at the beginning of the year, LA has been experiencing, I would say, kind of more intensified raids by ICE and Department of Homeland Security, and in some cases DEA and ATF. And so there needed to kind of be a response to that. And one of the organizations here in Southern California, Unión del Barrio, with whom BAP has worked with in the past, particularly around stuff like the Summit of the Americas a few years ago, kind of understanding that the Organization of American States and these other entities which kind of govern policy outside of the United States vis-a-vis immigrants in the Americas has a direct bearing on the migration patterns that then affect us locally throughout municipalities and cities in the United States. And that then those just it's kind of crazy that you have those policies which drive migration, and then on top of that you produce all these migrants, you produce all these people coming into states, and you essentially then begin to kind of kidnap and deport them, sending them to no man's lands without any procedure. I don't know if you all recall, a couple of years ago, so this kind of made me think also about this moment on the border down in Texas with the Haitian migrants. And, I think not enough is given to that moment, because what essentially happened, one, we don't fully understand why at that moment there was an upsurge of Haitian migrants coming to that border at that particular time, and that particular border in Texas versus the California border. But what ensued after that was literally them being put on planes and sent back to Port-au-Prince. Many of those people who hadn't lived in Port-au-Prince in over 10 years since the earthquake. And so those people have been living in Brazil. Those people have been living throughout the Americas, and were coming up through the kind of southern border and then being sent to a place. And there's no good record of how many of those people there were, etc. But that's a little bit around kind of what's happened. And so the Community Self-Defense Coalition thought they've been doing some of this work for the past, I think, 20 years, and kind of brought into formation a coalition of upwards at this point, 60, 70 organizations, but also individuals. And that work is to kind of really, on the one hand, inform people of their rights, but also kind of what to do when these folks show up, very kind of practically. Don't say shit to them. Uh, don't open the door if it's an administrative warrant. You only have to if it's a judicial warrant, and they're gonna knock you on the door anyway. So like things like that. So part of it is outreach and just connecting with people. So the red cards, is the red card going to do a whole lot? No, but what it does do is like it offers an opportunity for you to kind of meet with your neighbor and to begin a conversation with that neighbor around kind of what's happening. And from that, other kinds of information has been built. And beyond that, patrols daily since the beginning of the year. Like checking out the Home Depots, talking to those people, putting into plans. And there is this kind of mistake that it's only kind of like Chicano and or Mexican and Latin folks coming there. Also, there are like Black people from Honduras and all these places, but also there are African folks at some of these Home Depots from West Africa who I kind of speak to. And so their needs in terms of like French and Wolof and Creole and all of these things. So I'll kind of stop there and let you all ask some more questions before I kind of ramble on a bit.
Yeah, I think the question I am thinking about when I learned about this coalition, Carlos, is how long this kind of organization, this kind of organizing and focus has been going on. And you just told us it's been years and years, but that would suggest that the problem of deportation raids and arrests and that kind of thing has been going on for that long, kind of under the radar in that area. Is that true? Like, before the escalation that we're seeing now took off at the beginning of the year, what was it like? What was the relationship with the community like between ICE and the police and that kind of thing before Trump took office, that caused this kind of organization to go on for as long as it did?
Yeah, so from my understanding of Southern California, that this has been going on certainly under the previous administrations of Biden, the previous administration of Trump, and the previous administration also kind of Obama. We also know that Obama deported upwards of like 4 million people, and that there were processes and agencies which facilitated those kidnappings, departures, um, um, and violating kind of procedures all the time. And so that, I think that kind of constitutes, if you kind of look at those numbers and the relationship to the border, so there's Border Patrol as well. You have a situation where, particularly organization like down in like San Diego, and those areas, they had to kind of respond to it. And so this has been ongoing. I think what is perhaps distinct about this moment is there's a level of spectacle that is attached to this moment. And beyond spectacle, I think some kind of, I think distinctions should be made in terms of like moving from, let's say, Title 32, which governs the Guard, to Title 10, which puts that under federal auspices, because I think that is the kind of first time for that. So in that way, it is an escalation, but the need has been there. And that's why like so much of this training has, like Union del Barrio has had that. And like, if you listen to Union del Barrio, when they kind of like first kind of like started some of the trainings, they were talking about the Black Panther Party. And like how they kind of learned and understood what it meant to kind of protect community from that particular organization. And so putting that into practice, they've been super kind of like neighborhood focused. And I think this moment of like intensification is calling for an expansion. And I think that's one of the reasons. And just like not only expansion for expansion's sakes, but more kind of coordination throughout the region. And I think the article just came out that more is coming in like 5 more kind of liberal cities, Seattle, Philadelphia, New York City. I forget what the other 2 are. And these are kind of whole-scale ICE raids that are coming. And so I think these kind of networks of coordination have to become more of the norm.
Yeah. Even to your comment, I just want to hone in on the spectacle of it all. Because there's the organizing, and then there's the mainstream media reporting of said organizing. So initially, much of the footage that was shown on MSNBC was obviously footage from people on the ground that they would get from TikTok or some other social media because they did not send their people out there. They're no fools. um, and they were reporting it as they report on everything that this is strictly anti-Trump. This is a reaction to Trump. This is about Trump, and not really the conditions of the immigration situation that's already existing, that is being escalated by a Trump administration. That's being given cover for by the governor and the mayor, who are both Democrats. So I'm just wondering about this kind of spectacle, because it does seem, even to the, I seen someone in the chat have mentioned the prayer that took place yesterday. I think where Karen Bass was also there. Yeah, all the clergy of the community got together, and there's stages now. There's people doing separate marches and protests, insinuating or calling for more peaceful reactions. So there's a bunch of things happening all at once. And I'm wondering, how does the coalition make sense of this? How are you all making sense of it? And how do you make sense of the mainstream media narrative versus what's actually happening on the ground for the people that you are in your neighborhoods, that you are defending or protecting?
Yeah, but I think it begins there. The primary focus is on the people and kind of protecting and defending those people. And so there is a level of like opportunism, some of which I kind of witnessed firsthand, and spectacle. So just to give you a quick story on, I think it was Sunday morning, this was the mobilization of the Guard. That was the first morning. And so I went down to the detention center at around maybe 7:38 that morning. Um, and the reason why we were at the detention center is to kind of like watch, to kind of see where they're kind of transporting these folks from and to, like, where are they going? Are they disappearing? Because many of those people in the detention center downtown LA, where are they going? Do their people know where they are? Some of those people, and this has been confirmed, have already, just like, from the time, and under the length of like 24 hours, are already in Mexico City, or already in another country, in Guatemala, even if they don't live in Guatemala. Like, that's the situation around kind of due process, no due process whatsoever. So we're there for that particular reason. But I do understand that, or we do understand, I should say, that, the Guard is out there that morning as a kind of show of force. And you have all the media down there. MSNBC is down there, CNN is down there. And then Maxine Waters comes up, kind of runs into the crowd, kind of pulls the media, and it's lots of media out there. And there's a little huddle, and she kind of like goes up to the door, because this is where the detention center is, does a kind of quick, like, they won't let her in, they didn't let me in. And then she kind of like begins her kind of what then becomes like a 30 to 45 minute little press tour of like, this is why this is horrible. And like, so like everyone's doing the bare minimum while saying rhetorically all of these things that they can do. They're very kind of immediate things that they could do. For example, Karen Bass could, devote all of like LA's resources, monetary resources, to combating this. She could stand in the way. Gavin Newsom could actually, like, call down the Guard. Like, what is that confrontation? So like much of this stuff is rhetorical. And I think it gives them an out while being the kind of hero in this moment. Because just a few months ago, Gavin Newsom was participating with LAPD in sweeps and raids, like taking the properties of like houseless people here. And so the precedent that is before us, and I think this is why all of this stuff is so pernicious, and why both, I think, Bass and Newsom and others will kind of take advantage of this moment rather than resolving this problem, is that before LA are like 3 sets of very large games that are coming up in the coming years. There are the Olympics, there's the Super Bowl in 2027, and then there's the big one, the World Cup. So many things are being practiced right now, procedurally being put into process right now. And so, you know, there it's a lot of theater. There's the theater of the sanctuary city. There's the theater of like, oh, how terrible is this? But if you kind of pay attention to Bass, what she's essentially saying, they instituted a curfew yesterday, um, beginning at 8 p.m. in downtown LA, which is like, imagine. And this is like, I think words like siege, I think words like occupation are not hyperbole in this context. I think we have to seriously kind of think about the way the kind of counterinsurgency works vis-a-vis the U.S. military, the operate. And so I think another thing, and I like Erica, you listed all of the team, like some of the teams that I'm on in BAP, but it does allow me to kind of draw these connections. So all of this kind of happens under the auspices from this shift from not utilizing Title 32 to Title 10. That puts these troops, both Marines from 29 Palms and the National Guard, under the auspices of U.S. Northcom. And so we talk about these spheres of influence. We talk about AFRICOM in relation to the African continent. We talk about the management of the Americas through U.S. Southcom. And I think we have to think about this because it's just there, U.S. Northcom. And what that allows this operation to do is to, one, coordinate logistically, intelligence-wise, and tactically under the ground, under like Task Force 51. So they are under that kind of two-star general. So in practice, what this means is that, like, they're getting live feeds that are like, shipped to like NORAD in Colorado, which is the aerospace. And so this is the level of coordination. DEA, ATF, FBI, LAPD, LASD, LA Sheriff's Department, California Highway Patrol is on the scene. This is the level of coordination, and our coordination needs to, like, it has to kind of reach it. It has to like lift there. And so these kind of conversations, I think, around this is not a Black issue, like on that level, I think kind of gives lie to that. And there are kind of so many ways that that's incorrect. But for all of those reasons, these are same things, the same systems that kind of like are impacting us globally. But that's the level of coordination, and that's what we're facing.